Boy's English Journey, Previous 30 Days, Regret in Marriage, How to Learn English. Aman's English Journey, Improving English, Through Story, Talking to Yourself, Story Upgrade, Plan, More Access to the Best Models, Sahlin gitay, Engelo, elle, bartan. An inspiring tale of a boy's journey to rediscover the joy of reading. Introduction. Hello, my dear friends. Today I'm going to share a simple yet heartwarming story that everyone can enjoy. It is not just any tale, but one that carries a beautiful message about the power of books and the magic of storytelling. This story is about a boy named Sahlin gitay Engelo, elle, bartan, a curious child with an extraordinary name and an even more extraordinary journey. At its core, this is a story about reading, not just as an activity, but as a way to discover new worlds, understand emotions, and grow as a person. It is written in a way that's easy for anyone to follow, and I promise you'll see a little bit of yourself in Sahlin's adventure. So sit back, relax, and allow me to take you into the life of Sahlin, a boy who, through books, found a way to connect to others, to himself, and to the world around him. The story, Sahlin gitay, Engelo, elle, bartan. Sahlin gitay, Engelo, elle, bartan was an 11-year-old boy who lived in a small, picturesque town surrounded by hills, forests, and streams. His name was as unique as his personality. People often joked that his name sounded like the title of an epic poem. Sahlin, however, found the jokes amusing and would respond with a grin, "Maybe I am a walking story." Despite his cheerful nature, Sahlin carried a peculiar burden. He loved the idea of stories, but he had lost interest in reading them. As a younger child, he would spend hours flipping through colourful picture books, dreaming of castles, dragons, and faraway lands. But as he grew older, his interest waned. Reading seemed slow compared to the bright, fast-moving games on his tablet or the quick videos that could make him laugh in seconds. His parents, who were avid readers themselves, noticed the change. They often left books on his desk or in his room, hoping he'd pick one up. But Sahlin would glance at them briefly before returning to his tablet or playing outdoors. "Books are boring," he would mutter under his breath. A strange encounter. One crisp autumn afternoon, Sahlin was walking home from school when he stumbled upon an old, mysterious shop tucked between two larger buildings. Its wooden sign creaked in the wind, "The Wandering Pages." Intrigued by the name, Sahlin pushed the heavy door open, and a little bell jingled above his head. Inside, the shop was unlike anything he had ever seen. Books of all shapes, sizes, and colours filled every inch of the space. They weren't just on shelves, they were stacked on tables, hanging in nets, and even floating mid-air in some corners. The air smelled of aged paper, ink, and something sweetly magical. An elderly man with a kind face and spectacles perched on the tip of his nose greeted him. "Ah, a young adventurer," the man exclaimed. "I am Mr. Elric, the caretaker of this humble bookshop, and you must be—" He paused dramatically, as if trying to guess Sahlin's name. "Sahlin gitay Engelo, elle, bartan," Sahlin said with a shy smile. Mr. Elric's eyes twinkled. "What a magnificent name! You sound like the hero of a grand story." Sahlin chuckled. "I don't read much. Stories are too long." "Ah," Mr. Elric said, nodding thoughtfully. "But sometimes the right story doesn't find you until you're ready for it. Shall we see if we can find one today?" Sahlin hesitated, but something about the shop, or maybe the warmth in Mr. Elric's voice, made him agree. The book that changed everything. Mr. Elric led Sahlin to a small table with a single book lying on it. Its cover was worn, and the title was embossed in gold, The Journey of Bartan's Heart. "Your name is part of this story," Mr. Elric said mysteriously. "What? Really?" Sahlin's curiosity was piqued. "Indeed," Mr. Elric said, "but only you can discover how." Sahlin sat down and opened the book. At first the words felt heavy and slow, like they always did when he tried to read, But as he turned the pages, something incredible happened. The world around him faded, and he found himself standing in a lush forest filled with glowing trees. The book was alive, not in the literal sense, but as Sahlin read, he became the story's protagonist. Bartan, a boy who shared his middle name, was on a quest to retrieve a magical artifact that could heal his village. Along the way, Bartan faced trials that tested his courage, kindness, and creativity. For hours, Sahlin read, completely engrossed. He laughed, cried, and cheered as Bartan overcame challenges and made unlikely friends. By the time he reached the last page, the sun had set, and the shop was bathed in the golden glow of its magical lanterns. "You've been reading for hours," Mr. Elric said, smiling. Sahlin blinked, surprised. It felt like no time had passed at all. The ripple effect. From that day on, Sahlin's relationship with books changed. He returned to the wandering pages every week, each time discovering new stories that spoke to his heart. Reading became an adventure, a way to explore the world beyond his small town. But the change didn't stop there. Inspired by the stories he read, Sahlin began writing his own. He filled notebooks with tales of bravery, kindness, and friendship. He even shared his stories with his classmates, who eagerly listened and asked for more. Sahlin realized that books were more than just words on paper. They were portals to different worlds, mirrors that reflected his own emotions, and bridges that connected him to others. A legacy of stories. Years later, Sahlin gitay Engelo, elle bartan became an author, his books beloved by children and adults alike. He often credited an old bookshop and a kind man named Mr. Elric for sparking his love for stories. In every author's note, Sahlin included a simple message. To anyone who feels books are boring, just remember, your story is waiting to find you. Don't give up on it. And so, the boy with the extraordinary name became a storyteller, proving that sometimes all it takes is the right story at the right time to change a life forever. Conclusion. This story reminds us that reading isn't just about words on a page. It's about finding connections, building imagination, and discovering who we are. Like Sahlin, all of us have a story waiting to be found, and perhaps, by picking up a book, we'll find it sooner than we think. Sahlin's growing passion. Sahlin's journey with reading did not stop at the wandering pages. Every book he read opened a new chapter in his life. Each story introduced him to unfamiliar lands, unique characters, and ideas he had never thought about before. He started visiting the town library, where the librarian, Ms. Clara, became another important figure in his life. She noticed his growing passion and often recommended books that matched his interests. "You've read about knights and dragons," she once said with a smile. "Why not try stories about the stars? Science fiction might surprise you." Sure enough, Sahlin found himself captivated by tales of space exploration and futuristic worlds. He marveled at how words on a page could paint such vivid pictures in his mind. For the first time, he felt like he was part of something larger than himself, a universe of infinite possibilities. Sharing the joy of reading. As Sahlin's love for books grew, he noticed something remarkable. He wasn't the only one who had been reluctant to read. Some of his classmates admitted they found books boring or too hard to understand. Remembering his own struggles, Sahlin decided to help. He began organizing small reading sessions during lunch breaks at school. "It's not like homework," he would assure his friends. "We'll read fun stories, and I'll make it interesting." He used different voices for the characters, acted out scenes, and even created illustrations to go along with the stories. Slowly but surely, his enthusiasm rubbed off on others. One day, his teacher, Mrs. Lockhart, overheard one of these sessions and was impressed. She encouraged Sahlin to turn his lunchtime readings into a school-wide event. With her support, Sahlin launched a Storytime Friday, where students from all grades gathered to listen to stories and share their favorite books. A letter from Mr. Elric one rainy evening. Sahlin was curled up by the fireplace, reading a book about ancient legends, when his father handed him an envelope. The paper was thick, and the handwriting on the front was elegant. "It's for you, from someone named Elric," his father said. Sahlin's heart leapt. He hadn't been to the wandering pages in weeks, caught up with schoolwork and his new reading club. Inside the envelope was a letter. "Dear Sahlin, gitay, Engelo, elle, bartan. I hear you've been spreading the joy of stories far and wide. That is the greatest gift any reader can give to the world. Remember, stories are alive because people like you bring them to life. The next time you visit, I have something special for you. Yours in stories," Mr. Elric excited. Sahlin couldn't wait to visit the shop again. When Sahlin walked into the wandering pages the following weekend, the shop looked as magical as ever. Mr. Elric greeted him warmly and handed him a small wrapped package. "What is it?" Sahlin asked, his curiosity piqued. "A book," Mr. Elric said. "But not just any book. This one is blank." Sahlin unwrapped the package and opened the book. Its pages were crisp and empty. "I don't understand," he said, looking up. "This," Mr. Elric explained, "is for your stories. You've spent so much time reading others' tales. Now it's time to tell your own."
Sahlin felt a surge of emotion. He realized how far he had come, from a boy who thought reading was boring to someone ready to write his own adventures. The ever-expanding story. From that day forward, Sahlin began writing in the blank book. At first, the words came slowly, but as he practiced, his confidence grew. He wrote about brave heroes, magical lands, and even his own experiences. Years later, The Journey of Bartan's Heart became the title of Sahlin's first published novel, a story inspired by his own life and the lessons he had learned along the way. His books became popular, and readers from around the world connected with his characters and their journeys. Every time someone asked him where his inspiration came from, Sahlin would smile and say, "It all started with a little shop called The Wandering Pages, and a man who believed in the power of stories." And so, Sahlin's story continued, growing with every word he wrote and every reader he inspired. The lesson Sahlin's tale reminds us that stories have the power to transform lives. They teach us, comfort us, and inspire us to dream bigger. Whether you're reading or writing, every story you encounter adds something to your own personal journey. So, my dear friends, remember this. Somewhere out there, a story is waiting for you. All you need to do is open a book and let the adventure begin. Sahlin's world expands. Sahlin's passion for stories didn't just stay confined to books. Over the years, he found ways to weave storytelling into every part of his life. In school, he used his storytelling skills in presentations, making even the dullest topics come alive. History lessons became thrilling sagas of kings, explorers, and revolutions. Science experiments transformed into tales of discovery and invention. His teachers often praised his creativity, and his classmates eagerly looked forward to his projects. For Sahlin, storytelling wasn't just about entertainment, it was a way to make learning exciting and meaningful. But Sahlin also realized that stories existed beyond words on a page. They were in the songs his mother sang while cooking, in the old tales his grandmother shared about their family, and even in the quiet moments he spent observing nature. A journey to the past. One summer, Sahlin's family decided to visit his grandparents in a distant village. The village was nestled in a valley surrounded by green hills, and it had a charm that felt like stepping into a storybook. Sahlin's grandfather, Dadu, was a storyteller in his own right. Every evening, he would gather the family by the fire and recount tales from his youth. These stories weren't written in books. They were memories, passed down from generation to generation. One night, Dadu told Sahlin about a time when he had to leave his village as a young man to search for work in a faraway city. He spoke of the challenges he faced, the people he met, and how he eventually found his way back home. Sahlin listened, captivated. he realized that his grandfather's life was as rich and dramatic as any book he had ever read. Dadu, Sahlin said, his eyes shining with excitement, your story should be written down. It's amazing, Dadu chuckled. My boy, stories live in the heart. As long as someone remembers them, they'll never be lost. The idea takes root. Dadu's words stayed with Sahlin long after the trip. He began to think about all the untold stories around him, the ones hidden in the lives of ordinary people. He decided to start collecting these stories, just like Dadu had shared his. Armed with a notebook and pen, Sahlin began interviewing people in his town. He spoke to shopkeepers, farmers, teachers, and even the elderly residents at the local nursing home. Everyone had a story to tell. Some were funny, others poignant, and a few were downright inspiring. Sahlin compiled these stories into a book he titled Echoes of Everyday Heroes. It became his way of honoring the beauty and complexity of real life. When the book was finally published, it received glowing reviews for its heartfelt and relatable narratives. The power of connection. Sahlin's journey as a storyteller taught him one of the most important lessons of all. Stories connect people. Whether they are written, spoken, or shared through art and music, stories have the power to bridge gaps between generations, cultures, and even strangers. Through his books and interactions, Sahlin found himself forming deep connections with people from all walks of life. Readers would write to him, sharing how his stories had touched their hearts or helped them through difficult times. One letter in particular stood out to him. It came from a young girl named Elle, who had been struggling with loneliness. I used to think no one understood how I felt, Elle wrote, but when I read about Bartan and his journey, I realized I wasn't alone. Thank you for giving me hope. Sahlin was deeply moved. He wrote back to Aliyah, encouraging her to keep reading and even try writing her own stories. A new chapter. As Sahlin grew older, his love for stories only deepened. He traveled to different countries, learning about their cultures and collecting folk tales. He gave talks at schools, libraries, and community centers, inspiring young and old alike to embrace the magic of reading and storytelling. But he never forgot his roots. He continued to visit the Wandering Pages, where Mr. Elric, now retired, had passed the shop on to a new generation of caretakers. Sahlin also made regular trips to his grandparents' village, where he would sit with Dadu by the fire, listening to his latest anecdotes. Eventually, Sahlin decided to open a storytelling academy. It wasn't a traditional school, but a place where people of all ages could learn how to share their stories, through writing, speech, art, or performance. The academy became a hub of creativity and connection, attracting people from near and far. The legacy lives on. In time, Sahlin's name became synonymous with storytelling. His books were read in schools, his academy flourished, and his impact was felt across communities. But for Sahlin, the greatest reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was the knowledge that he had helped others find their own voices. On the day Sahlin published his final book, he inscribed the dedication with a simple yet powerful message. To every storyteller, past, present, and future, thank you for keeping the magic alive. And so, the boy with the extraordinary name continued to inspire, proving that stories are not just about words, but about the connections they create and the lives they touch. Epilogue. Your story awaits. Dear reader, just like Sahlin, you have a story within you. It might not be written yet, but it's there, waiting to be discovered. So pick up a book, a pen, or simply start sharing your thoughts with someone. Who knows? Your story might change someone's life, or even your own. And remember, the magic of storytelling isn't in the ending, it's in the journey. Tonnal katay sisik, video fakshik, kumagan channel subscribe up.